Welcome to another exciting episode right from the vibrant heart of HomebrewCon in sunny San Diego. Now, in this episode, we're popping the lid off of some brewing secrets that you may have never heard. We're going to delve deep into the mesmerizing world of craft beers with none other than master brewer Mitch Steele. Now, Mitch has brewed some of the most tantalizing award-winning IPAs in the entire world. Have you ever wondered what it takes to brew an award-winning IPA? Well, get ready to be blown away by Mitch's approach. And don't you dare click away before the end, because Mitch is going to be unveiling a malt that he avoids in his IPAs, which in doing so took his IPAs from good to great. So join us on this hop-filled adventure. Grab your notebooks and get ready to step up your brewing game. Things are about to get unbelievably exciting. I am at the 2023 HomebrewCon having a blast. We're here in San Diego. This is what's considered the biggest night of the whole event, and for homebrewers, the biggest night of the year. So, Mitch, do you mind telling what's going on behind us?
Yeah, so this is Club Night, and this is where homebrew clubs from all over the country come in and set up booths and pour their beers like a beer festival. And there's a lot of costumes, and there's a lot of themed booths and things like that, and of course a lot of great beer.
Yeah, a lot of great beer. It's all part of your pass. So everybody's got a little tasting cut. Mitch has his there. I've got mine in my bag, but it's empty. So I got to get
that's
that
a problem.
full. That's a problem. Well, I try not to have too much beer during these interviews, so I don't say anything extra stupid.
Understood.
But anyway, you ought to check it out. This is a ton of fun. It goes on now. This is set with 2 more hours, right?
2 more hours, yeah.
It's a blast, and costumes and everything. But you're not here to talk about that. My audience really wants to hear from you.
Okay.
So they said, man, if you can get in touch with Mitch, here's my question.
Okay.
So
Fire away.
This is real-time polling here, and these are the questions that you asked. So, Mr. Steele, if you're prepared.
Yeah, I'm ready.
And you can call a friend if you need to. What is your recipe creation process? Ooh.
There's not one way for me to do it. The process it typically involves looking back at what I've done before that's worked and using elements of that.
You mean you do some things that don't work?
Oh, of course. Doesn't everybody?
Well, not somebody like you.
Yeah.
I mean, when you write the IPA book and all this.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. That's a really good point, because when I was researching that book, I learned so much from other brewers that I was able to incorporate those tricks and techniques into our beers at Stone.
That aren't in the book?
They're in the book. They're in the book. But, so I guess what I'm saying is I get a lot of information and ideas from other brewers. And just talking beer with them, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. Maybe I could take it and do this with it. And that's a huge part of the process. But sometimes it's just relying on experience and things that I've brewed before and taking that as a starting point and then moving things around a bit.
Do you get any ideas from homebrewers?
Absolutely. So our Pilsner at New Realm is hop bursted. I didn't know what hop bursting was until Jamil Zainashev told me what it was.
I don't know what hop bursting is.
So it's loading up the whirlpool with hops and getting a lot of aromatics from like traditionally German hops, not boiling them, but getting them in the whirlpool and retaining a lot of aromatics. And so to do a hop forward Pilsner, I thought that would be a really good idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does that work for New Zealand hops? You talked about.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah. I think because they're pretty powerful, aromatic. Yeah.
Yes. So put it in the whirlpool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you learned that from another brewer or a home brewer?
Well, it was Jamil Zainashev, who works with a lot of home brewers. So,
okay. So a little bit of both. He's been.
Yeah. But, I asked him specifically. I said, hey, what's hop bursting? I keep hearing about it. And he told me. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Wow. So the recipe creation process, you kind of get ideas.
Yeah.
But how do you decide this is what I want to brew?
Well, a lot of times that's the first step, right? And so with us at New Realm, the ideas can come from anybody on the team. they can come from the sales team or the marketing team saying, hey, you know, we haven't brewed a Belgian wit beer yet. Let's do one. And then we'll put it together. I do have veto power, so if I really don't want to do something, I'll say, guys, let's do something else. But it's a very collaborative process to figure out what we're, you know, especially for beers that are going into distribution. And we have a lot of creative freedom for our tap room beers. And so I tend to let the head brewers drive a lot of that, and I think that's really important. So we have a head brewer in each of our 3 locations, and all I ask is that they share the recipe with me before they brew it, and so I know it's what's coming and what they're thinking, and then it generates some discussions, and we have a lot of fun with it. But I think giving the team some creative freedom to do that kind of stuff is really important.
So it's one thing to create the recipe. It's a whole nother thing for it to get out of the tap room and into distribution.
Sure is.
So tell me how you kind of take it from, oh yeah, they love it in the tap room, to get it into distribution. That's a big jump, isn't it?
It is, and I'll be honest, sometimes it's a battle. You know, sometimes the distributors don't want it, or our sales team doesn't think it's going to pull when it's out in distribution. And sometimes they're right, you know. I mean, it's these days, 10 years ago, you could say, this is our beer,
you'll buy it.
You'll buy it, right? and that's not the case anymore. So you got to pay attention to what's going on in the market and give the distributors and the salespeople something that's actually going to sell.
So what's selling right now? With your vision to the future, when you're creating a recipe, what do you narrow? What do you think's selling well that you would want to create a recipe for going forward?
Well, those are 2 different. So right now, hazy IPAs are still in our area are still king, but we're seeing a lot of traction with lagers, which I think is awesome. Yep. So we've been brewing more lagers lately, you know, we're talking West Coast IPAs. We came out with one when we opened, and it didn't do very well because it was too bitter for people in Virginia and Atlanta. They just didn't like the beer, the bitterness in the beer. But we're talking about coming back out with one, so we'll see what happens. But lagers, I think, are really where things are going.
So what recipe will you base that on? Are you going to change it from an old one, or are you going to come back to the one you said you originally came out with?
No, we're still brewing that beer. That's Hoplandia IPA, and that's Centennial and Simcoe and the dry hop. Yep. We're going to do a different dry hop mix and change it up a bit. Okay. I don't ever like to brew the same beer twice.
Well, can you tell us what's going to be in there that you're kind of proud of and interested in?
Well, I think the one thing that we're certain of at this point is there's going to be a fair amount of Citra hop in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And why do you like Citra hop?
It's just one of my favorite hops. Okay. I think, you know, I go back to the Southern California Homebrewers Conference back in like 2010, and somebody there who actually was Julian Shrego from Beechwood, but he was a homebrewer, award-winning homebrewer, and he had this 100% Citra beer, and it was amazing, and it knocked my socks off, and I've never forgotten that. So I like the hop a lot.
I got to think what Citra's in that's kind of widely distributed. Is there a Citra-forward, widely distributed beer?
There are a lot of hazies with Citra in them.
Okay.
But yeah, there's Beechwood does a beer called Citraholic now. I've seen it this trip in cans.
I'm going to have to check that out. Matter of fact, you're opening a brewery in my town, aren't you?
We are, hopefully, yeah, in Greenville.
Good.
Yeah, I hope we get that thing open soon.
Maybe I'll get my Citra hop beer then. Maybe it'll be the new one.
Yeah.
I mean, will it be, are you going to do a lot of brewing there, or are you going to depend on your main bigger facilities?
It's probably going to be small stuff there. I mean, when we first started, our idea was to have 20-barrel brew houses in multiple locations. But when we got our Virginia Beach location with a 50-barrel brew house, we kind of shifted gears a little bit. So we're going with like 5-barrel systems in our other spots.
Oh, wow. That's quite a step down from Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is in Atlanta? I've toured it, but it's huge.
So Atlanta is a 25 hectoliter or 22-barrel brew house.
We've been photobombed.
This is club night, man.
This is club
awesome.
night. Come on up, get photobombed. This is why you got to come. You never know who's going to walk up. We had Elvis a little while ago. It's quite wild.
That's awesome.
So 5-barrel system in Greenville, but it sounds like you're going to do some specialties there. You can experiment with that size.
We're going to take a crack at doing some fermented sours there. So we've been doing kettle sours for a long time, but we've never done mixed culture fermentations, and we think this building's going to be our opportunity to do a little bit of that.
You going to have a cool chip?
Yes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. So yeah, that'll be
cool
fun.
chip in Greenville.
Yeah.
I think there's only one other.
Yeah.
That's Sean Johnson.
Oh, at Bird Slice
yeah.
Out. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm especially looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay. But we were talking recipes. So before we leave that, though, how will you decide on the recipes in Greenville, for example? What do you come up? How do you do that?
I don't know. We haven't really started yet. We've got some ideas. We're going to have some fooders there, so we want to have something that's kind of like a feeder beer to the rest and do a lot of blending. So I'm not sure yet.
A new fooder or an old fooder?
They're new.
Okay.
They're new. We tried to get old ones, but every time we tried, the deal fell through. So we just ended up getting new ones because we had to get moving.
They'll eventually be old.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. We're going to move to our next question. Hop forward beer freshness. What do you do? I mean, you're Mr. IPA. Your IPAs are some of the best that there are. But how do you keep them fresh?
Well, there's two ways to approach that. I think number one, the obvious way is to keep oxygen contact at a minimum after the beer is done fermenting. So, in your dry hopping packaging process, make sure that the oxygen levels are extremely low as possible. And that's going to just prevent aging in general. And then I think the other piece to that...
How do you dry hop without introducing oxygen?
Well, there's equipment out there. We're not doing it right now. What we do is we dry hop from the top of the tank. So we bubble CO2 in the bottom of the tank while we're dry hopping, and it creates a blanket of CO2 on top of the beer.
Oh. So
the oxygen pickup's minimal. But there are like hop injection systems now that do complete purges of the hops and everything else. And so there's some technology out there that really helps with that now.
Okay. So that's in the process, and getting it to the bottle.
Yep.
What about after it gets packaged?
Well, I mean, you need to watch your oxygen pickup while packaging, because that's the most risky spot in the process. So we make sure that the beer feeding the packaging line is very low in dissolved oxygen, and then we check the integrity of the seams on the cans, and we check the total package oxygen levels, and if it's not good enough, then we adjust foaming and all sorts of flow rates and things like that. So it's all really important and something you just got to watch all the time. I think the other piece to this is recipe formulation, honestly. And if you use a lot of specialty malts, they tend to overtake the hops very quickly as the beer ages. So the hop flavors fade faster if you're using, like a lot of dark crystal malts or something like that.
Well, Vinny talked about that in our last program, and I talked to you actually about it a little bit.
That's right, yeah.
So what dark crystals do you avoid, or dark malts do you avoid?
Well, if I'm doing like a West Coast IPA, I avoid anything above 15 degrees Levibon on the crystal, anything above 15. I mean, there's beers like Celebration Ale that have their own special thing going on that use dark crystal malts.
But that beer doesn't last long.
And that's the thing. The thing is those Maillard reaction flavors turn into dried fruit very quickly as the beer ages, and so and that just covers up the hops, and then of course hops fade away. The other important piece is hop selection, because certain hops stick around longer than others, and YCH did a really interesting study on hop survivables, and they evaluated probably 20 different varieties and how quickly the hop aromatics faded during fermentation. And so a hop like Centennial has a very high survivable rate, so it sticks around a lot. So it's a great whirlpool hop, for example. But there's other hops that fall off a cliff. Citra, as much as I love Citra, it falls off a cliff after about 30 days. And so I've never brewed a 100% Citra beer because I'm always afraid it's not going to taste anything like what we wanted it to after about 4 weeks.
So in a consumer point of view, and then I want to come back to the home brewer, consumer point of view, I go in the store and I'm buying my IPAs. How do I know it's fresh?
Date codes.
Okay.
Look at date codes. And I hate to say it because, a lot of people have gotten to the point where they're really looking at date codes.
Yep.
But, an IPA, if it's a West Coast IPA, if it's older than a couple months, 3 months old, you probably want to look for something else.
Yep.
If you're talking hazy IPAs, they tend to, because they tend to have some things in there that help with the aging process, 4 months.
Oh,
or
really?
So. Yeah.
So
just the haze.
They'll
and
stay around a little longer.
Yeah.
That's it. Is it, that I don't know that they have more hops, do they? It's.
Well, I think most hazy IPAs do,
Okay.
but I think
is that a
helps.
preservative?
What's that?
Is that a preservative?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, some hazy IPAs also have some yeast in them still, and yeast consumes the oxygen real quick before it can damage the beer.
Oh, so it's almost bottle conditioned or can conditioned.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, not all hazy IPAs, but some of them do.
So watch the dissolved oxygen.
Yeah.
Watch the crystal.
Yep.
No darker than C15.
Well, that's what I do.
Well,
Yeah.
no, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else other than date codes?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We'll move on to the next
right.
question. And actually, you only have 3 questions because absolutely nobody went for the 4th question. But I kind of liked it. I may ask it anyway if you'll take it.
All right.
So, your World Cup beers. You won
Yes.
a lot of them when you were at Stone and at New Realm. Can you share kind of I know maybe you want to share your recipe, but tell us, I guess, what it takes to prepare and enter a World Cup beer that you're trying to win the World Beer Cup.
Well, it's funny. The 2 beers that won this year got medals at World Beer Cup. One was our Blackberry Smoke American Lager,
Yeah?
which won a gold in the Great American Beer Festival 6 months earlier. So
That's good.
we entered it in the same category. Now, the thing that's different about that is I entered a similar beer in a different category years past, and it didn't win anything. And we entered the Blackberry Smoke beer. We were entering it in American Lager, and I switched it up to go contemporary American Lager because the beer is a little more contemporary. It's got a little more hops. It's got some Pilsner malt character. It's kind of a nice blend of lager styles, and that's what took us to the medaling point, which was really cool. So, a lot of it's very strategic. You got to figure out where to enter it.
The category.
What category to enter it in.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of categories that have a lot of overlap. So, we have an IPA that we've never entered in an IPA category. We've entered it in American Strong Pale Ale because it's a little lower alcohol and a little lower bitterness than an IPA, like a normal, or what the guidelines call for in an IPA. So if you're sitting at a table with a whole bunch of bitter beers and you get our beer that's at 40 to 45 IBUs, people are going to say it's not bitter enough. So we enter it in a different category. And there's strategic stuff like that goes on.
We've got a prize-winning home brewer, Annie Johnson. We're on camera.
Hello, camera.
This is Homebrew Night. This is Annie Johnson.
Oh my gosh.
The queen of homebrew.
Yes, we're all homebrew.
Cheers, Annie.
Cheers.
Cheers, Annie. Well, speaking of homebrewing,
Yep.
I know we were talking about the World Cup beers. Sounds like it's very
Yeah.
strategic. Probably can't go much deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do any. We pull regular production beer. There are people that brew beer specially for the competitions. We don't really do that. We just take what we've got and try to get the freshest beer. Make sure the oxygen levels are low because it's several weeks between shipping and actually judging. But that's about it, And it's just entering the beer in the right category is really key.
So what I didn't really ask was freshness for homebrewers. They want to brew an IPA. They're bottling it. They're possibly kegging it. What should they do that might not be obvious?
Well, I think back when I was home brewing, I always primed the beer before I packaged it, and that really helps. That really helps. If you're putting sugar in the beer and getting that yeast active again, that yeast is going to pull in any oxygen you pick up during packaging. So I think that's probably the best insurance.
Okay.
You know, and I know people now, and you know, not many homebrewers were doing this when I was homebrewing, but you know, people now are carbonating and packaging carbonated beer. And you know, the one thing I would say is if you're doing that and you're not adding back sugar and you don't have yeast activity in the package, make sure you foam up to the top of the bottle.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest thing, and that pushes out a lot of the air.
Cap on foam.
Cap on foam, yep.
Cap on foam. All right, so I'm going to ask the last question.
Okay.
Which was, what's new from the horizon from New Realm, besides the Greenville Brewery? Anything?
Yeah, there. You know, I mean, we're working on some new beers. You know, we talked about the West Coast IPA project. Yeah, I think, you know, we want to open a few more locations with breweries, so we're being fairly intense with our searches right now. You know, our goal was to be a Southeast brewing company, and right now we're in Virginia, Georgia, and South Carolina. So we're not in North Carolina, we're not in Tennessee, we're not in Florida. We just got to Alabama, which is cool. We partnered with Auburn University, and we're going to help sponsor their brewing science program.
Oh, I have a friend that's going through their brewing program.
Yeah, this was just announced.
Wow.
But we've been working on it for a couple of years, and we've got a partnership with Auburn University, and we've got a brewery on site there. We just hired a head brewer.
On the university?
On the university.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's in their hospitality area. They've got a whole bunch of restaurants and things, and now we've got a brewery there that we're hoping to open midsummer. Okay. But the brewery is operational, and the head brewer starts, I think, next week. So that'll be fun.
So, Mitch, let's just wrap up with Homebrew Con. We've got all these fun things going on behind us. What's your favorite? You're here at Homebrew Con. You've been to previous ones, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part, and what do you enjoy the most?
Oh, my favorite part is this.
This
Club Night. It's just amazing that everybody's so into it, you know, and the beers are great. And I mean, just look at this. Look at how many people are here just enjoying beer.
They're packed.
Yeah, it's wall-to-wall people. I've always liked this conference.
Yep.
And when I was doing more speaking at these kind of things, just really enjoyed it because this is where craft beer started.
Steffi! Come join us. So this is Fermentus.
I think he needs a photo with the Fermentus team.
That's right. Cheers!
Cheers!
Well, that's a good way as we wrap up our program. Thank you. So you have fun-loving vendors, fun-loving homebrewers. We just have a ball, and Club Night certainly is the crescendo.
Yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time.
All right, Doug. Great
Cheers.
to see you. Cheers.
Well, folks, there you have it, straight from the brewing vats of the extraordinary master brewer, Mitch Steele. I hope you enjoyed this fermenting journey as much as I have. And if this episode added a dash of inspiration to your brewing aspirations, be sure to smash that like button. That small action really means the world to us, and it helps us keep the beer wisdom flowing. And hey, don't just leave yet. We've got some frothy surprises lined up for you. These next videos were hand-picked for you, filled with more brewing secrets, stories, and of course, some unforgettable beer experiences. So until then, keep your mugs frothy, your spirit high, and thanks for watching and staying tuned for more.